Hi there, and greetings from Spain, from sunny Spain, Barcelona in fact, Catalonia in fact, to the excitELT conference attendees. And I'm addressing the theme of things that they don't tell you about teaching in Spain before you start. Now, I've been here for 30 years now, and I'm not actually in the classroom very much. I have contact with teachers, but I would say that generally the things that surprised me when I first arrived, didn't expect, and which I'd been told, is the kind of love-hate relationship that Spaniards have with English. It's perhaps historical, a love-hate relationship they've had with England over the years, but also I think it's kind of a resentment that, you know, why should we be learning a global language when we already speak one? That's changing, though, and I think there's a perception now that that English is no longer tied so much to the mother country, and it's the global language, at least of Europe, and many young people are embracing it, recognizing its utility, both for study and for travel. And this is reflected in recent figures which show that now the kind of teenage learners have broken through the kind of B1 barrier, according to a British Council study, and the majority of them have kind of overcome that barrier, which is a good sign. No thanks, perhaps, to private language schools, of which there are many fewer now than I first arrived, the slack having been taken up by the public sector and improvement generally there, although language teaching is traditionally rather teacher-centered, particularly at the university level, and exam-oriented. And of course our exams, like everywhere, have really kicked in, and they drive a lot of the kind of curriculum design, etc., and the methodology. There's been cycles of reform over the years that I've been here, so the pendulum swinging backwards and forwards from sort of very communicative, task-based approaches to much more language-focused, grammar-focused approaches, was more or less where we are now. Although the new kid on the block is CLIL, Content and Language Integrated Learning, which is the flavor of the month, with very, very mixed results, I have to say. The argument being that teachers and students are not yet within that kind of critical, not that critical mass of fluency and vocabulary to take on board studying their school subjects in a second language. But I think the main thing to emphasize, if anybody's thinking of coming here, is the extremely precarious nature of language teaching here. I did a kind of survey of teachers' attitudes and answering that question. One of them said that the pay and conditions are possibly the worst in Europe. Another said that he absolutely loved his 10 years of teaching in Spain. It was interesting, fun and rewarding. However, I had to change profession as the extensive timetables and low salary were not sustainable for the quality of life I wanted once I reached my 30s. And I think this is probably generally true, that the bulk of teachers in the private sector are kind of in academies and institutes are younger people who don't mind a little bit of precarity if it means living in Spain and learning Spanish perhaps along the way. Other comments included the fact that they weren't prepared for the amount of kids teaching that was involved, and that certainly changed as I first arrived. Also the fact that there's no real beginners anymore, amongst the adults at least, but there's a lot of, at least a third, if not more, of your timetable may well be involved in teaching young learners, in some cases very young learners. The other thing worth pointing out is it's very difficult to get into the public sector to become, as it were, a civil servant. You have to have the relevant local qualifications, and basically you have to be a Spanish national. So it's a great place to live. It's not necessarily a great place to work, particularly if you're a full-time language teacher. You'll spend a lot of time traveling from place to place to accumulate the kind of hours which will pay the increasingly expensive rents here in Barcelona. But hey, you know, wow, it's a great place.